Hello everyone, my name is Betharn and I welcome you to Space Engineers. It's going to be the first video in my survival series where I go over how I generally survive on a solar system start using the Earth spawning planetary lander. I have heard a lot about people having trouble with it and designing ships in the atmosphere, and I spend almost all of my time in atmosphere and almost none of it in space, so I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of how to do it. Another caveat that I will say is that I like to play on pure realistic settings, inventory, welding speed, everything. I feel it adds a lot more to the game and the survival aspect versus creative. If you're going with the higher settings, generally it just feels like a creative light game. So if you're going to play survival, I feel like you might as well go all the way. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start a new game. We're going to go to custom game. We're going to scroll all the way down to star systems. There's plenty of other options. These guys give you a whole bases and everything. I feel they're way too easy. Give you way too many resources. I like a little bit of a challenge. So come down here. I'm gonna name this YouTube Survival Series. We're gonna set it to survival. Realistic sound I like. Block limits I turn off generally for myself. Leave autosave on. I'm gonna go to advanced. Alright, so here we're going to set everything down to realistic. Inventory it helps in the early game, which is my biggest gripe, is that I wish you could set this for your player's inventory so it's not as laborious very early game. Just the problem is, seriously, the 10 times inventory capacity is a little silly once you start building larger ships, especially if you combine it with something like assembler efficiency. Because you can carry 10 times as much ore, and then you will also get 10 times as many resources out of that ore. So I mean, you can take the smallest, you can hand mine and build a mega ship in like an hour, easy, and it's a little silly to me. Refinery speed is another one. I mean, you can crank it up. If you want to crank all this stuff up, it will speed things up. I just feel it hurts the long-term balance of the game, even if it slows you down. One suggestion, maybe if you really hate how slow it starts, is crank your inventory size up early, and then once you get your first couple of ships that I will show you that I'm going to build, you can then go in here and you can modify the settings and drop it back down to realistic to get the feel that I think helps the survival mode of the game. And the same thing with welding and grinding speed. A lot of people will crank it to ×5 to speed things up. The problem I feel with that is that it makes tools kind of useless. You can actually start with the tier 3 tools with the 2 pips on them, like almost immediately. I'm going to show you how to do that. So basically this starts you off. If you do that, you're already starting off at the ×2 or like ×3 welding and grinding speed anyhow. So you might as well just leave those there. I generally put my max objects like 100 just to give a little extra breathing room. It'll keep some of the lag down, depending on the power of your computer. Now we're going to come down here to the options. These are all the things you can change to customize your game. Most of these we're going to keep on simply because it adds to the survival aspect. I mean, if you want to build fancy ships, you can turn off thruster damage, so you can just put in weird setups that normally wouldn't work in the ship itself. I'm going to turn off auto healing to give it more of a survival feel. We're going to leave air tightness on for sure. Unsupported stations I usually don't mess with this option. It's usually off, and I think I just leave it there. I'm not even bothering messing with it. But I'm going to turn off wolves, simply because I like them on, but they just become a nuisance and they're so buggy. If they weren't so buggy, I wouldn't mind it, because they're not hard to set up a system to deal with them. You can leave them on, and they kind of can give you a lot of resources, especially when they drop power cells over and over again. But yeah, they're just buggy as hell, and they'll block your building locations for like 10-15 minutes sometimes until their corpse despawns. Just kind of a nightmare, so I don't bother with it. Okay, we're gonna enable respawn ship, obviously, or we'll be screwed. You can choose this on and off. I'm gonna leave it on and assume that you might play this on a server, and I'll show you how to deal with that problem. The other thing I'm gonna mess with, which I don't always do, I wanna try it out, is I'm gonna drop the day duration to 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. This will give you a little more of an option by tracking the sun and seeing its path a little more consistently, so you can get your early solar panels up to be as efficient as possible without using rotors in which you're going to basically avoid rotors in any multiplayer game because they just explode. So everything's all set up. We're going to launch the game. This takes a while. It can be finicky, so I will come back to you as soon as we're in. See you in a minute. Alright folks, and we're back. Had a little bit of a crash there, so got a new load screen. Alright, we're going to choose Planetary Lander. This will start you on the Earth with a basic lander. You can do it on Mars or the alien planet. They just play a lot differently. You're going to have to worry about oxygen more so on both. These guys don't really have the resources to start with until they add more basic stuff to the game. So we're going to click that, respawn, and it should pop us in there shortly unless my game crashes again. Alright, cool. Here we are. The red text in the middle there says temporary ship. It will be removed after you leave the game or spawn on a new one. In a single player game, the leave doesn't actually apply to you, but the spawn in a new one does. If you're playing in multiplayer, however, you will want to use the trick I'm showing you to make sure that whenever you log out of the game, you don't lose your ship, because it will just disappear as soon as you log out. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is explain these thrusters on the side here. You see our altitude straight ahead, 7,000 meters, 6,800. Atmospheric engines require a certain amount of atmospheric density, thickness in order to function. So as you can see in the bottom left, we're finally starting to slow, even though we've been falling for like 5,000 meters. Up until about 5,500 to 6,000, sometimes 5,000, depending on where it starts you on the planet. Your large thrusters here will not have enough resistance to actually slow your ship down. But we've accomplished that, so we're about to stop. One of the first things you should do is open your K menu, which will bring up your control panel into your terminal here. And you're going to go up here, landing gears already grouped for you. Turn off auto lock. One thing you want to avoid is locking your landing gear onto voxels, i.e. non-stations or ships of other sorts, because it tends to break the game spectacularly. So I would always avoid that, and since we're going to land directly on the ground, we don't want to lock and then blow up our ship in the ground while we're at it. So the first thing you want to do after you've got that all settled, you get your bearings, you look around. You've got the moon right there, which is in a really good spot for us, because once we get established, we're going to have to take a trip up to the moon to get some platinum. But our first goal, if you look straight ahead, you see that blue, it looks like water. This game doesn't have water, that's going to be ice. And I always look for an ice lake unless I'm doing some kind of challenge, and we'll go over there and land. So some of the ways you can get around is, one of my preferred ways is on the bottom left, you'll see it go red. It's red, dampeners have been turned off. What your dampeners do is maintain your current altitude and position depending on where you're at. They work a little more in space for all directions, but on the planet it basically hovers you if they're on. What happens with this ship though, even with the dampeners on, you can fall if you aren't actually going at full speed down pretty much. So if we do this, the ship basically flies like a helicopter, so if you do that, it slows you on your trajectory and your large engines are firing to completely stop you. What you can do is take advantage of not wasting. One of the problems with dampeners and traveling is if you have them on, they will, if you do forward thrust, it will immediately start using backwards thrust to stop you, which is a huge waste of energy. So what you can do is, again, open your K panel, come down to your thrusters, it labels them, and it shows you the direction in which the thruster fires in the brackets at the end here. So what you can do is you can take your forward thrusters, and you can go up here and you make a group, and you can go lander, thrusters, coasting is what I generally do. So what this will do is if you press G, I rebind myself, so I do I, but we'll do this, and you can toggle this on and off. And what we'll do is we'll turn off these forward thrusters. Now, oh, I got it backwards, of course. So if we do these, oh yeah, okay, so I was right, but I got it wrong in my head. So if you take these, we'll delete this group and we'll do that again. These ones shoot out of the ship backwards and push you backwards. So you want lander thrusters, and these are our coasting thrusters. Save, and these ones, make sure those are on. And then now, this should be the same group. So now, okay, so what we can do is you can press forward and you see our aft thrusters are pushing us forward. And now when we let go, even with our dampeners on, it'll maintain our altitude. However, the front thrusters will not waste energy slowing us down. So if you're really far from any place you would like to spawn at, you want to save some of your energy, so you'll do that and you can just kind of coast. And if you look, we're kind of tilted forward. So we don't have as much forward thrust, so what we're doing is we're like basically like a helicopter, we're going forward without using a whole lot of thrust. We're using the bottom thrusters. Well, another method you can use is shut off your dampeners and fly kind of like that lander from like that game in the 90s where you just kind of hop around. So it gives you like a parabolic trajectory, and you'll fly along that trajectory and gravity will eventually start pulling you down. And since the game has a speed limit of 100 meters per second, you can do some tricks to basically delete speed. It's like if you're taking off if you're landing with the heavy load, for instance, and your atmospheric thrusters are just barely powerful enough to keep you aloft. If you have another set of powerful thrusters, say you have hydrogens, aft regular hydrogen thrusters, you can kind of do this same thing, and it'll actually give you more forward, quote-unquote, momentum, and it'll take away your downward speed even though your thrusters aren't powerful enough to actually accomplish the task. So there's some tricks to do. Alright, so we're getting over here. What we're going to keep an eye out for, you can see all those dark splotches everywhere, not the gray ones, but the actual dark ones that I'm like, is behind my lander right now. That's all ore. So it looks like there's a ton of ore in the area. Our little ice lake has like 5 or 6 or 8 patches. So that's the stuff we're going to need to grab. So what I'm going to do is, a lot of people will land and then build like hand scout or build a little scout ship to do the ore. I generally just take my lander and I scout the ore patches on my lake, and then I will settle next to the iron patch. Usually there'll be one. If there isn't, then you can settle near uranium is probably your next best goal to settle near, although you don't have to go there very often, so maybe nickel or silicon or something like that. Nickel probably being the largest one. So now to slow down, since your forward thrusters are both off and weak, depending on what you're doing, you can kind of just tilt back, i.e. like a helicopter. Another way to get straight down instead of wasting thrust or anything is just to shut off your dampeners, and your ship will fall. As long as you make sure you turn them back on early enough so you don't smash into the ground. You should be fine, since the starting thrusters are ridiculously powerful for this little ship. So the silicon, nickel, and magnesium, so that's a pretty good vein of resources. Let's turn those off again, and I'm going to do the whole thing here. Oop. And the ore detector that we have on this ship is a range of 150 meters. That was probably a lot too much speed, or wasting a lot of energy here. So we're going to shut off our dampeners. We're going to check this ore deposit below us. And even if it is iron, I'm going to check the other one. I prefer to be kind of near the middle of the lake. It'll always detect ice, which is a little silly. Obviously, we know there's ice there. Gold and silver. Perfect. So we're going to turn off our coasting thrusters again, and I'm going to give us a little bit of forward speed. I'm not going to go as much, because one thing you do want to do is be a little bit patient, because one of the problems is all the energy you spend accelerating, you have to also expend decelerating. So you're going to waste power by going up really fast just to make things quicker. So just keep it a little bit slower, and you'll save a lot of power that way. Especially relevant later on when you use hydrogen fuel to get out of the planet. So here's nickel and silicon, magnesium, and so not iron anywhere yet. I'm actually having a hard time seeing the ore deposits from down here. So let's see, where are we here? I think there's one directly to my right. Let's see if that's iron. Because you're going to need more iron than anything else by a substantial margin. So when you're doing your little trips to mine, the closer you are to the iron, the more quickly you can restock. I suppose it doesn't matter at this point, because now we're just wasting a bunch of power. I already checked that one? I think I did. Alright, so let's go back this way. We're going to do a full burn. Waste a bunch of power, but it'll be fine. We do have a fairly flat area. One problem that you can have is if you spawn in between a bunch of mountains, they can actually block the sun for a lot of the day. A lot more of the day than other times. Like this one is a pretty open area, so you can have issues with solar panels, which is going to be our main early source of energy. But once if you find uranium, then you're basically set almost for the rest of the game on power, which is a pretty understandable complaint to the survival aspect of the game, that it's not, that power really is almost ignorable. Well, this is an obnoxious little lake here. Suppose I see the merits to hand exploring. Oh, there's some uranium right there too. So you know what? I'm gonna just settle right here in the middle of the lake because there's gonna be iron somewhere. I don't know where it is, but we got a bunch of good resources around. And these lakes are usually pretty small anyway, so if you just settle in the lake or wherever it looks cool to you once you build a largest base. So we're just gonna settle like right around here. Alright, so you can use Alt and the mouse to look around. You're going to do that a lot in third person with your ships, just to make sure you don't hit anything, and it adds to the difficulty later on. If you use remote control ships, you can't do that, and you have to use cameras, which makes for some interesting design tasks to overcome. So we're going to land here. You're going to see the landing gear yellow. That means they can lock, and if your auto lock is on, they will immediately lock, and you can get your ship locked in some kind of skewed angle. But you want to, again, avoid that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go and we're going to grab all of our thrusters. Shift click to grab them, and then control click adds things to the group and takes things out. And we're going to do lander, thrusters, all. And you want to get in the habit of naming your groups and the things that you build on a thing that's going to be permanent. This is not permanent, so don't have to worry about it. You need to come up with a good naming convention, because if you know anything about programming, you need to make sure that you don't lose things and make it easy on yourself in the end. So we're going to go here and we're going to toggle on and off, and we're going to press 5, and now all of our engines are off, which is going to save us power. Engines generally use the most power of almost anything besides your industry, especially atmospheric engines. They suck down power like crazy. So we're here, and this is where we're going to build our base. There is a bug right now where even though those are off, they act like they're firing, which is obnoxious, but we know they're off. So what we need to do now is, this is a temporary ship, especially if you're playing on a server, you have to worry about that. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to quickly set up my hotbar here. This is my normal armor plate setup for hotbar 1. Alright, so we're going to need some steel plates. There's a couple in here. Some of these screens will help you out if you don't know. There's enough components in this for some batteries and some solar panels and some extra stuff. This kind of tells you basic tasks and things you can do to get set up. I'm going to rip those down in a minute, but what we're going to do is we're going to frame out basically a merge block is what we're going to be doing. And now I'm going to supply a survival bunker design that you can use if you wish, in order to kind of establish that with like a frame for the base that will eventually be built. I'll show you how to do that. What we're going to need here is merge blocks. And what we're doing here, we'll take a merge block and you put it on your ramp here on the side. I don't know why I did that. And okay, so what we're going to be doing is coming into the base through here. So if you want to mark the spot for yourself, you can put a ramp here, like that. And you can use your home and insert, delete, page up, page down. That'll rotate the blocks in the top right. It kind of gives you a hint. I have not ever mastered it, so I just kind of flail around sometimes. All right, so what we're going to do is directly above this tile is going to be our thing. I'm actually going to put a block there. So on top of that block is where this ramp is going to sit. And normally with merge blocks, you can unmerge and unmerge. If that block wasn't there and this merge block attached to the base, you can unmerge and then fly away with the lander. I basically want the lander to be permanently here, and we can repurpose the resources from the merge block. So we're gonna just fully connect it to the base itself. So if that is gonna be in that block above here, that merge block will be up there right next to it. So the merge block on the base is going to have to be over here. So if you hit X, you can turn on your hydrogen jetpack and fly around. So if we put the base merge block here, there we go. So once those two touch there and there, that will merge them completely, and there'll be two grids will become one, and they can be permanently attached together if you wish. So what we need to do now is build those up, and then we will. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we don't need this door. We're gonna rip it apart. Another thing I just noticed is you want to press J and open your face mask, which will actually affect your sound with realistic. If you can hear the game sound. If you forget to take your helmet off, you'll start dying. So, and then my O2 is down, so I can actually use my med bay in here. It'll fill my O2, my power, and my hydrogen back up, as long as you're connected. So we'll go ahead and build this up. This up. I mean, you don't technically have to build these blocks up. You can do it to get rid of, like, basically get rid of resources when you, especially if you play on realistic settings for inventory. You will have to worry about storage space. In 10 times inventory, you really don't. Which is, again, another reason why I don't particularly like times 10 inventory, as it kind of trivializes pretty much all of the management of the game, essentially. You can also double click, which will lock on your welder or your grinder. Right, so we'll do that. Now, basically, we need to come up with these parts. So we need a couple of motors, some large tubes, some small tubes, computers, construction components. Some of the best sources for those are this, construction components. Oh, I didn't fill up my inventory yet. And the bottom above your hotbar, you can see your inventory, how full it is. Alright, so that gave us some parts. So you can go over here and you can left click and it immediately throws all the parts into the thing. So you can just dump your parts in there and then go grab more, since you're going to have to do multiple trips on realistic inventory settings. Another thing you can do is you can grind things down like this. As long as you don't fully destroy it, it still will be semi-useful, depending on like landing gear. Like that's still useful since you're not going to lock the landing gear anyhow. You just leave it like that. Alright, so we need some computers. What is that? Computers, large tubes, small tubes. Alright, so I'll show you. Actually, another thing we need to do, especially on realistic, is get rid of our hand drill. It takes a lot of mass and volume up in your inventory. And we also don't need our gun or bullets. And then I'm going to just throw the rest of this crap in here as well. So what you can do for small tubes, I'm going to hit X and hover up here. You can get these catwalks, have a lot of small tubes. You're also going to get a lot of useful components out of that beacon. Construction components, those radio components you'll need for something early, I forget what. If you build an early antenna on one of your small ships, which mine actually, the ones that I supply actually have them built in, because antennas they seem useless at first, but they're super useful. So it's generally a good idea to add them to your ships, even if you don't feel like you are going to use them or not. We need large tubes, which I forget the best source for large tubes early is. Not that, because one of the problems with that is we could rip this whole thing apart and drop all the components on the ground, but it's a pain to clean up. But those radio components, you can only carry like 5 at a time, or maybe 7. So it'll take multiple trips just to get, and you get the resources from the top down and you build from the bottom up. So in order to get to those large tubes, you have to go through all the radio components first, which is not helpful. Another place I know where large tubes are is going to be, I believe the landing gear had a couple. Yeah, you can just grab those 4. So landing gear is probably your best bet to finish up these merge blocks, since they're at the top of the resource list. Another place is, I know the atmospheric thrusters. Actually, we don't need to fully build this because we're actually going to get rid of them pretty. As soon as we merge, we're just going to get rid of them again. This has some computers. Oops. So we don't need those. We don't need those. We don't need those. I'll pick all this crap up. If you don't have inventory just like that, it explodes everywhere. This actually, I should have actually turned off some more of my stuff. These actually take like a lot of power. It's almost nothing, but you might as well. Your early game, you might have to stretch your power a bit. So the more stuff you turn off or get rid of that uses power, the better. Like if you come in here, similar, use a little bit of idle power. I think 1 kilowatt, just kind of a lot. This is 30 watts. You can turn off, but mainly we have you do the thrusters because they have a lot of idle power usage, and everything else you can probably leave for now. Actually, you can turn off your small reactor. I should have done that sooner because you always start with 0.03 uranium or 0.3 uranium, which is more than it seems like at first because it can power for long, because it'll use 0.01 at a time depending on how much power you need. And it will. Reactors are interesting because they only use uranium as needed, and they use exactly what they need, and there is no difference between a large ship, large reactor, and even a small ship, small reactor. They all provide the same efficiency on power through uranium. So you can put 1,000 small grid reactors and it would be the same as kind of one large one. So you don't have to worry too much about that. So we're gonna merge here. So we're gonna turn our engines back on, and we're gonna figure out why the game locked to the ground, which is bad. 2 will unlock you if you find yourself locked. So this is where you're going to use your alt and pan around because you want to line these up. It's going to pull your ship when you get in there, so be ready for that. And as long as you line it up, it'll pull you slow enough, and it's going to snap. Okay, now it's snapped. Now we are completely merged. So you can shut down your engines, and you can also grab a control panel anywhere. You can also, to grab your K menu for the grid you're on. You can also access your inventory through it, or you can grab the inventory and click control panel or production or anything like that. So we're gonna go to our control panel and we're gonna shut a bunch of stuff off that use power. We're not using the gyros ever again. The air vent, yeah, the air vents use a lot of power apparently. Let's see, anything else that uses a lot of power? Nope, not really. So I think we're more or less good. So now the ship is merged to a station. The ship will never go away now. It is part of the station. I think you can even unmerge it and it'll be fine. And you won't have any problems that way. So we're going to empty our inventory, and I'm going to show you how these are completely merged. So we'll rip apart. Now it's not even functional, and it's still there. So we'll rip off that block, and we will rip off this block. And that'll give us back our components, because we're going to be a little short on components early game, so we're going to need to stretch what we can. So let's get up here, unload our inventory, and I'm going to explain a couple things. First of all, it's probably something I should have done sooner, is let's grab our assembler. We're going to go to our inventory. We're actually going to have to go to control panel and go to our oxygen generator and turn off the conveyor system, because it might mess with us when we're trying to do things. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab one of these oxygen bottles and stick it in our assembler. Actually both. We don't need these, and we won't need them anytime soon. So put them in your assembler. Go to production, go to your assembler, click disassemble, and disassemble all, or click each one. And we're going to take those apart because we want those silver ingots in the middle there. They get 10 per oxygen bottle. And for the most part, this game is 100% recyclable, basically. So those are the exact components required to build an oxygen bottle. So you never lose anything when you're assembling. Only when you're refining ores do you actually lose something. Yeah, but that's by design. So now that we have a little bit of resources, we're going to go... Actually, I think the other thing we need is cobalt. So we're going to grab... We don't have any metal grids yet, so we need to find some metal grids, which are in here. Let's see how deep they are in there. Oh, very deep. So let's find... another place I think metal grids are is here. Those are actually hard to get to. Actually, right here. This is the metal grids we want. Alright, so rip apart your air vent. This is one of the toughest blocks in the entire game. I have no idea why. They drive me nuts. They're really cool for decorations on small ships with the new skin that was added, but they take an age and a half to build and disassemble, which is stupid. Like, that's insane. This is the basic tool, but I mean, you've already seen how quickly I've done other things. Alright, so now we got our grids. We can go in here, we're going to put our grids in, and we're going to go to production, disassemble all. And we'll do those, and then we're going to get something started that'll speed things up. And then I will start planning out some things. We're going to go to our tools, and we're going to proficient welder and elite proficient grinder, not elite grinder. We need silicon, actually, apparently. So you can go to your inventory. You can hold right click and drag, drop it in the assembler, and you can type in any number you wish. So I'll put some in there. So we're going to go to production. We don't have silicon, so once this is done, we're going to disassemble the bulletproof glass. That'll give us silicon, and then we can build the proficient grinder. And then that'll set us to almost the best tools already. So you can go control left click will give you 10, shift left click will give you 100, and control shift left click will give you 1,000. If you double click, it'll do a whole stack. So we're going to go to assemble, tools, proficient grinder. We're going to go to inventory, we're going to grab our proficient welder and throw our regular welder in there. And now what we're going to do is refill our hydrogen through the med station. And we're going to come out here. And I'm going to build our fabrication ship is what I generally call it. It'll be in the description. A link to this ship. Call it the Gremlin model. And to start it, we're gonna build it with a projector because I've already built the blueprint. So we need a landing gear. If you get a large one, you just press the hotkey again and it'll switch to a small one. So you're gonna play with this guy. I'm gonna line him up to the wall here. I'm actually gonna build it on this side because I have plans on that side where we might need this out of the way. Alright, so get it kind of lined up with the ship a bit. They auto lock when you put it on another grid. So that's obnoxious. Do that. One day I'll learn all these hotkeys. Alright, that's fairly well lined up. So we're going to grab a small armor block, we're going to add that on, and then we're going to add a small reactor to our hotbar, and we're also going to add a projector to our hotbar. So we're going to throw a small reactor on here, which we're going to have to take apart our large reactor to get components for this. Now what you're going to want to do with this guy, that tile right there and that tile right there are the only ones that are different. This tile is the top, this tile is the back. I believe I'm remembering that correctly. So if we do it like this, as you can see, that's on top and that's on back. Since we're pointing away from the lander, we place that there, and any projection we do in, as long as it's copied correctly, should show up in the right orientation, and we won't have to do a bunch of bells and whistles to move it. Another thing is anytime you get new tools, you have to go into your inventory menu, character tools, grab the new one and throw it here. You might as well throw your grinder there too. I don't have it, so let me do that. There. So now we have our better tools on hand, so this will speed things up considerably. So we'll build this guy. You don't have to build the other parts at all. You can if you want, but it'll give it a little more durability. But since we don't have meteors on, which is something I didn't actually go into earlier, but I'd leave them off generally because they don't make a whole lot of sense coming through the atmosphere. Plus they're just a big pain in the butt like wolves. What else did we need? I actually don't recall. I know we're gonna have to rip apart our reactor to get reactor components. We need 3. So we're gonna need some grids and large tubes, reactor components. So I need to find a new source of grids. This guy might have grids. Okay. The gyroscope right here is one of your best early game sources. It's got a ton of steel plates. It's got a ton of metal grids, which you're going to need early. For certain things, you need them for... See, we're already out of inventory space, which, like I said, you're going to have a lot of inventory problems early on. So we can start basically storing. Oh, that's it. What you can do is I'm going to drag this into here, and we'll take some of these lighter components out. Take some steel plates, and we'll come over here and we'll throw in. Need some large tubes, motors, computers. I don't know what I did with all my large tubes. There they are. Large tubes. Large tubes and metal grids are ridiculously heavy. So we need one motor, 2 computers, and 2 motors, 2 computers, reactor components, 3 computers. Let's grab a couple of motors. Let's grab a handful of computers. And what reactor components? Which actually might not work. Build this up. Actually, I've had problems in the past, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this down. And what you're going to want to do, just in case, is you're going to pull this out more and then build your reactor on it. Because one issue that there is with projectors is if your projection covers up all your access points on a grid, you cannot access the grid to move the projection to access the grid, which is silly to me if that's a thing, but alright, so that you see this is a lot quicker. We got to our reactor components already, so we can finish our reactor. Double click. And we're only one step away from the best tools, so we're sitting pretty already. Alright, so where is that uranium? I left it in the reactor. Again, okay. So come here, reactor. So we're gonna do this and make a giant mess. And grab our uranium, of which I don't have any inventory space for. Grab our uranium. I've done that before too. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this up, show you the projector, get a setup ready to build this thing, and then we will cut it out, and I will go into the next video and probably show you a time lapse of me building it, because your first ship is going to take a long time to build with the settings that I chose. So we're going to go into blueprints here. We're going to find my gremlin. We're going to click the blueprint, and we're going to load the blueprint in. And it'll lag up, and of course it spawned it right on me, so the very thing that I was trying to avoid I also caused. So in order to fix that, we need armor plates. Oh Lord. Armor plates, we're going to need some computers, displays, and construction components to address this situation. So let's go ahead and build the grid down here, and then we shall go to hotbar 8, I suppose. Grab all blocks, and you can type in panel, control panel. And we'll throw the control panel on here. And we will build the control panel. And we will access this. Now we can access the grid since this thing's not in the way. It's in the proper orientation. That is the top and the bottom. We just need to move it away from the ship, which should be forward offset. Negative, for whatever reason. And then horizontal offset. Negative also. Alright. So we have it over here, and in order to get it buildable, you're going to need to build it basically out, like this. Alright, so you can't, those don't connect, so if I dropped it down a single tile, it would be buildable. What I'm going to do is slide it over. So we want horizontal, we've got a control panel, projection, horizontal offset, -5, I believe, would do it. I think this gives you an indication that it's got buildable stuff. Warning, projection out of bounds. Nope, I lied. So negative. Well, you can see it right there on the side of my screen. Okay, horizontal offset. Set. I can now build it. In order to more easily build it without using all of our hydrogen fuel all the time, what we'll do is we'll build ourselves a little platform underneath it. I think we'll raise that another tile or so to give us more control panel, projection, vertical offset. Just a single -1. So that should give us plenty of room to work with. So we'll go ahead and build ourselves a little frame to stand on that has plenty of room so we can work here without too much hydrogen being burned constantly. And then once I get that set up, we'll come back and we will get to work on this beast, and then I'll transition into a time lapse of it. So I will see you in the next one.